Click the Create Ingredient button to make a single serving ingredient from the currently viewed recipe or meal record. Note in this example that a single serving of this recipe is 3 cups of the recipe. Click the button. The ingredient is created and displayed. Note that the ingredient name derives from the name of the recipe or meal, and it includes the date that the ingredient was created. The new ingredient's nutrition information is derived from the recipe or meal's single-serving nutrition values, as displayed in this part of the form. Also note in this example that although the recipe serving was 3 cups, the ingredient is created for a single cup value. If you compare the grams of fat, carbohydrate, and protein to what is shown, in a single serving here, you'll find that 3 times these values is the same as these values. After the Create Ingredient button was clicked and the new ingredient created, this set of controls is displayed. Let me close the ingredient. Click this button to redisplay the ingredient at any time. If you make any changes to the underlying recipe or meal record, like for instance you change some of the listed items, you can click this button to update the nutrition values in the ingredient itself. The date shown in this control is the date that the ingredient was either originally created or last updated. The ingredient form has a Used In button. Clicking this button will open up a list of any recipe or meal records where the ingredient was used in. This example, we just created this ingredient, and it's never been used anywhere. The ingredient form also has a Go to Recipe button. I'll navigate to the last meal. Then I'll reselect the ingredient we were just looking at, and that's this one here. I can click this button, and we navigate back to the recipe or meal record the ingredient was created from. I'll reopen the ingredient. The recipe this ingredient was made from included all the sauce ingredients plus the pasta that went into the servings. Let me close this form, and we're going to start a new meal record. This will be a supper. I'm going to leave the default name alone. And what I'm going to do is navigate to the ingredient we just created. And there it is. As I recall, a single serving of this ingredient was actually 3 cups, so we'll enter 3. Tab over a couple times. So with a single line entry, we've created a single serving of the entire meal. Saves a lot of data entry time. I'm going to reopen this ingredient by clicking this button. Pull it out of the way. Navigate back to the recipe the ingredient was made from by clicking this button. Click this button to redisplay the ingredient. Click this button to navigate to a list of records where the ingredient was used in. In this case, there's only one record. The supper meal we just created. I'm going to select that record and then click View Recipe or Meal. We've navigated back to that meal record. I'll redisplay this ingredient, and I'll navigate back to the recipe it was created from. Let me open the recipe ingredient again. Note that the value here is listed as 3 times the value here. I'm going to make a change to the listed items instead of 1 pound of ground chuck. Let's make it 2. Note that the single serving calories has changed. Let's reopen the recipe ingredient, and that's because after we made that change, the ingredient form switched to displaying this ingredient. So we'll click this button. We're now looking at the ingredient made from the recipe. The value here is still the old value. It doesn't reflect this number divided by 3. To update the values here to represent the new single serving values as defined here, click the Update button. Confirm with a yes. Note that the values here change to reflect 1/3 of these values. Reopen the Used In form. Select the only recipe or meal record the ingredient was used in, and navigate back to that record. Reopen the ingredient form. Note that the values in the newly updated agreement don't match the values that were created when we first entered this meal using the original ingredient. And that's because when we entered this item originally, the recipe behind the ingredient only used 1 pound of ground meat instead of 2. Let's go back to the recipe the ingredient was made from. Redisplay the recipe ingredient. To delete an ingredient that was made from a recipe or meal, click the trash can. The warning says you should really check to make sure it hasn't been already used in a recipe or meal. We know that this was used in only 1 recipe or meal. So I'm going to say yes, I'm going to delete it anyway. I'll confirm it with a yes, and it's been removed. After the ingredient itself was deleted, note that those controls changed, and the Create Ingredient button is again available. I'm going to navigate back to the last meal, which was the supper meal we logged with that ingredient. The listed item is no longer there, making this record defective. I'm going to delete this meal record.